A very good morning to all of you. We have been talking about Susan Sontag's Against Interpretation. In yesterday's lecture, we came to know about her position regarding literary interpretation, and we came to know that she advocates art for art's sake, not art for life's sake, and she talks about what you call the creator's sensibility, moral sensibility. So it becomes a key term in our vocabulary. Further, she explores, her views on art. We refer to that as well with reference to her essays. So she invites readers to ponder the development of her own sensibility, and she talks about the development or intellectual development. We also came to know about the background of this particular essay. This essay is taken from a collection of essays, the book Against Interpretation and Other Essays. Now, in this lecture, we shall be talking about Against Interpretation, an essay, the title essay from this collection. This essay was written in 1964, and it is divided. Means I'm talking about this essay from the collection of essays against interpretation and other essays. So we are talking about the title essay. This essay was written in the year 1964, and it is divided into 10 small sections. So we shall have a section-wide discussion. In section 1, Sontag describes the Greek theory of art, which you are familiar with. So you are familiar with Plato, Aristotle, and the Greek theory. The Greek theory of art as mimesis or representation. The Greek theory looks at art as mimesis or representation, and even she talks about the beginning of considering artistic value of the work in terms of its usefulness. This means the artistic value of a work of art was determined on the basis of its usefulness during the Greek period, and those who follow the Greek theory, they also do the same. Here, she emphasizes on the need of coming out of this mindset, and rather she disapproves. Disapproves means she denies, she rejects, she does not accept the superiority of content over form. And generally, in the Greek theory, content is given utmost importance over form. But Sontag does not accept this superiority of content over form. So here we shall first of all talk about the Greek theory of art. It's a kind of revision for you people of the first semester, which you already learned. We shall quickly look at it. So we understood that the Greek theory of art looks at art as mimesis, an imitation of something, or representation of the things around it. So in ancient times, during Greek period, I mean to say, art was believed to have a magical power, and it was used for incantation. Incantation means taking name of God and worshipping God. In Indian system we have shlokas. So similarly, art was used as a kind of incantation. It was an instrument of ritual. A ritual is, the things which are performed for worshipping. So it was a part of these religious rituals. Art was the part of ritual in the ancient times. And the earliest theory of art, we already are familiar with, is considered to be the Greek theory of art. Okay, these Greek philosophers, the Greek theorists, proposed that art was mimesis, as I mentioned earlier, an imitation of reality. Plato thought that art is twice removed from reality. So, since that time, from that time, from the Greek times, we can say, the value of art became the matter of a critical discussion. It was Plato who started with. And this theory is called the mimetic theory, challenges art to justify itself. For example, you are already familiar with the fact that Plato considered the value of art as dubious. It is of no use to in an ideal society. He thought that the poet should be banned. He considered ordinary material things as themselves mimetic objects. Whatever you see around, everything is mimetic. That was Plato's view. Mimetic means it is an outcome of the original idea of God, imitation of transcendent forms or structures. Transcendent means I mentioned beyond this physical world. They believed in the power, and the creator of this world already had an idea about these objects that we find around us, and these objects are merely representations of the original idea. So whatever we see around is simply an imitation. It is not reality. That was Plato's view. For example, the best painting of a bed would be only an imitation of an imitation. A bed is, the bed prepared by the carpenter is an imitation of the original idea. And the bed painted by a painter, created by a painter, is an imitation of that imitation. That's what Plato believed. So for Plato, art is neither particularly useful. For example, the painting of a bed is no good to sleep on. One cannot sleep on the bed in the painting. So art is not useful in a way. And it is not true as well. So art is neither useful nor true. That's what Plato thought. But his disciple Aristotle came in defense of art. We see his arguments in defense of art. But they do not challenge Plato's view that all art is an elaborate visual illusion in art. Therefore, Plato calls art is a lie, says that art is a lie. He calls all art as a lie. And Aristotle too does not challenge this particular view of Plato. But he disputes with Plato's idea that art is useless. He accepts that art can be an imitation. Art is an imitation. But it is, no, he does not agree with Plato in his view regarding the usefulness of art. So he says, lie or no, art has a certain value, whether it is lie or not, but it has a value, according to Aristotle, because it is a kind of therapy. Art is a therapy. So it is useful. It is not useless as such. Especially medicinally. You are familiar with the term catharsis. Medicinally, art is useful because it arouses and purges dangerous emotions. It brings out the suppressed emotions and it purifies the emotions. So in that way, art is useful. So, according to Sontag, in Plato and Aristotle, the mimetic theory of art goes hand in hand. Either Plato or Aristotle, they accept that art is an imitation and the theory goes hand in hand. Okay? Uh, of course, Aristotle accepts the usefulness of art, the value of art, but the assumption that art is always figurative, as art is not reality. So that goes hand in hand. Now, here comes Sontag's defense of art in the same section with reference to Plato and Aristotle's theory. She advocates, you know, the Mamet, she thinks that, the advocates of this imitation theory, mimetic theory, advocates means here Plato and Aristotle, or others who support this theory, did not close their eyes to decorative and abstract art. They simply think that art is an imitation, but they don't look at decorative and abstract art, which is not easily seen. So, in our view, the fallacy that art is necessarily realism, as I mentioned earlier, she advocates art for art's sake, not art for life's sake. She does not believe in this particular realism and philosophical aspect, moral duty of an artist. It is rather a fallacy, an assumption, a false assumption that art is realism. She says that this particular fallacy can be modified, or even to the extent she says it can be scrapped, it can be thrown away without ever moving outside the problems delimited by the mimetic theory. Yes, the realism, so-called realism, the fallacy of realism, can either be modified or scrapped, thrown away, and by just without ever moving outside the problems. Means while talking about these things, of which the mimetic theory has talked about, the first thing that we need to do is to throw away this idea of realism. So she thinks that all Western consciousness or awareness of and reflection upon art have remained within the confines staked out by the Greek theory of art. Means Western awareness, Western assumption, Western thinking, okay, Western thoughts are centered around the Greek theory of art. Art as mimesis or representation. And in our view, it is through this theory that art as such becomes problematic, and therefore it needs to be defended. It is in need of defense. So in an attempt to defend art, many a times form is separated off from content. As we understood with reference to Hegel and others, form and content are inseparable, but in an attempt to defend content, form is separated. And that makes us believe that content is essential and form is accessory. You are familiar with the term accessory. While buying your car or any a bike, etc., you say, don't give us accessory, just give us the machine, the car, etc., the bike. We buy accessories outside. So form is considered to be just kind of accessory, the peripheral thing, the additional thing. It is not the core in this particular attempt to defend art. Now, in our view, even in modern times, when most artists and critics have discarded the theory of art as representation of an outer reality, many of the modern theorists have discarded, have rejected this particular view, but in favor of the theory of art as a subjective expression. They discarded this theory of representation of an outer reality because they believed in individualism. They started thinking art as a subjective expression, for example, romanticism, modernism, etc. So they started talking about individual emotions, but still they don't go away from the mimetic theory. The mimetic theory of Greece or Greek mimetic theory believed that art was a representation of an outer reality, whereas these individualistic or the writers who believed in individualism thought that art is a representation of subjective emotions. Only that is the difference. But still, the main feature. What is the main feature? The mimetic theory, imitation, remains over there. Whether we conceive of the work of art on the model of a picture, art as a picture of reality, or on the model of a statement, art as a statement of the artist, in both the context, whether we look at art as the picture of reality or the statement of the artist or expression of the artist's emotions, content still remains first. Content remains the center. It receives the centrality. Means although the content has changed, but still content is given importance. In case of mimetic theory, the Greek mimetic theory, the imitation of the world was at the center, whereas in the other theories, the imitation of means artist's personal emotion is at the center. So the content, the subject matters may have changed. It may now be less figurative, less lucidly realistic, but it is still assumed that a work of art is a content. Or it's usually put today that a work of art by definition says something. For example, what X is saying, what X is trying to say is, what X said is, etc., etc. So we keep on talking about these things even today. Means content remains at the center. Okay, now we shall go ahead with the section 2 of this essay.